Well, I don't really have to introduce Xabier Barandiaran. Everyone here knows you as a very active, long-standing member of the IAS research group here at the University of the Basque Country. You're probably most well known, apart from being a very dedicated supervisor, for, for your work on agency and specifically in the sensory motor domain. But you've always, I think, had an interest in artificial intelligence and philosophy of technology as well. So I feel like maybe Marta would be the better person to introduce you today. But anyway, I think when Lola Almendros from the University of Salamanca was here, you were working together in the wake of ChatGPT and the fuss that was made around it, and trying to relate some thoughts on agency with large language models and some claims that have been made about whether or not they have agency and so on. So I think the joint work that with Lola you did and then presenting today has come out of this collaboration, and I'm very happy. Yeah, thank you for presenting and take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Mirko. Lovely presentation. I have to thank you also for mentioning Lola, who is a co-author of the paper, she was present on the abstract and title that was circulating around, and she's a co-author of a paper with, well, not exactly the same title because we are still negotiating it, but the paper draft that we hope to submit soon. The whole talk today and the context and the idea was the result of our joint research during her stay. And she gave a shorter version of this, much shorter simpler version of this in a Braga conference on philosophy of mind. And here we are. The paper has evolved, and we have now expanded to accommodate more up-to-date literature and obviously new ideas on the way. Now, I don't know, this is not working. Okay. Yeah. So basically, and also the title is being negotiated, as I mentioned, transforming agency on the mode of existence of large language models. This title is for those of you who are familiar with Simondon's work. I will present it later. The main goal of the talk is try to know what is this new being that surrounds us and is going to become more and more prominent in our lives, digital and otherwise, which is ChatGPT or in general large language models of different kind. And I need your feedback on the talk because, as it happens to me, some of you already know because you suffered this in the past. I try to put too many things in all my talks, and I might need to focus depending on your interest. But the main structure of the talk is to have a short introduction to what is happening today with large language models and how they are being categorized by different authors. Then what's the state of the art? What computers can do today as a language game with the original book by Hubert Dreyfus, what computers cannot do, published in the 80s, very influential in the history of computer science and artificial intelligence. And then we're going to delve into the internal working of how large language models work. Large language models are the new technology, so to speak, transformer technology applied to large language models that is behind the ChatGPT and Gemini and Copilot and all the technologies that are monopolizing the headlines on artificial intelligence recently. And the architecture, the training, and some forms of anthropomorphizing ChatGPT are important, and the very new agentic revolution, the new hype in artificial intelligence, I'll try to explain. with internal mechanisms of the technologies that are now famous and promising to change our lives. Then I will argue how transformers are not autonomous agents in the traditional sense that we've developed in different theories in this group. Um, and then the question is open: what are they if they are not agents, right? Because that's perhaps the most important novel part of this paper. And finally, some points for discussion. This one should be expanded, but they didn't fit nicely here. So I think there are like two big parts of the talk, which is point 3, 4, obviously, and 5. But 3 and 5 take the longest to explain. And I think they are all important because there is no, that's the Simondonian idea. There is no way we can philosophically judge a technology without deeply understanding it. And on the book on Simondon's on the mode of existence of technical objects, the pages and pages dedicated to the, the the internal structure of the diode and how it operates on the triode and the whole complexity of the material and functional understanding, concretization of technical objects. And I think it's important to understand that. But at the same time, we may not have that much time. So I don't know how to proceed. Maybe I can go relatively fast on how it works, and then we can go back if that's a good compromise. But I think it's fascinating, and let's see how it works out that way. Okay, so AI ontology, the inflationary and the deflationary accounts. We are living an AI revolution. This is everywhere on the news, also on the stock market, also in geopolitics. Uh, it's difficult to say when it started, but certainly there was a winter of artificial intelligence, a long period where none of the promises of the early days of artificial intelligence seemed to be realizable. But in the recent decade, the last decade or this decade, we are still living, perhaps this decade more than the last, but obviously the origins of today's revolution can be traced back to the last decade, 2010s, at the late 10s. We have some success that seem to be out of reach for the previous technologies, like beating humans playing Go. There is a fantastic documentary about the whole Go victory by DeepMind against the best player of Go, because in the countries where Go is very popular, most. Hmm? Yes, it's an amazing victory, Arancha. It's for no, but have they played again? Have they played again? No. It's just like okay, 4-1, so we can close close the history with you won, but not completely. It's like chess. Kasparov didn't was not humiliated the first time irreversibly, but it's no doubt now that it's possible for machines to outperform any human in chess. But it was thought that Go was different. And there are very interesting things. I suggest you watch the documentary because the way in which Go playing was a reflection of the soul of the player. It's like very common in Asia. Apparently, I didn't knew about this, and suddenly this alien player that had amazing moves that were reflection of a soul. Well, that was like, and it's quite. I think in the Western idea of chess playing, which is more associated with intellectualism and mathematical minds, it was perhaps easier to assume that machines could beat us. Maybe not, but at the time it was a big issue. Anyway, then came other defeats. And for example, in esports, now we are not talking about something that can be easily mathematized. Dota 2 is a social game where you have human teams, 5 members, playing a complex social strategy against another team with very open scenario. It's not like Go or chess where you have boxes and grids, very mathematically determinable. You have different types of characters. They communicate through the game. There are different types of strategies that involve also human aspects, like cheating, or it looks like I'm going to attack this way. I mean, well, obviously that also happens in chess, but this is like like more complex, and it was succeed. OpenAI succeed with 5. It was the name of the artificial intelligence that played five members of this game. But there were other games also, for me, more surprising or shocking, because the artificial intelligence was playing as if it was a human. So it was not playing by getting information of the position of for example, of the chess pieces, but was playing Atari games or any other game that is usually very sensory motor. And it was playing without encoding of the rules, just learning by playing, spontaneously learning and getting better than any human. And this was already a sign of something deeply changing on the artificial intelligence front. And finally, is conversations. Conversations are the ultimate game. You play it all the time. It's open-ended. It's based on common sense, etc. Obviously, but it's not only the technical success. It's also the economic success that's important here, because the scale of investment, economic investment, is just crazy. Like I don't know, Sam Altman asking for $7 trillion. I mean, we are talking about GDP of whole countries invested in one artificial intelligence experiment. And yeah, and also is the huge social and economic impact of artificial intelligence. They're going to transform all the jobs. That's what we are being told. Geopolitics, China versus United States with Taiwan. It's all about, well, it's partly about artificial intelligence. Certainly, is very important part of contemporary geopolitics. Or in Gaza, for example, the way in which artificial intelligence is taking the role of deciding who to kill and to do it more systematically and faster than ever, are just symptoms of the importance that artificial intelligence is taking for human lives. Also, as a technology, the rate of adoption, as you know, ChatGPT has been the fastest adoption rate of a technology ever in human history. Like television took about 20 years or 50 to get to a huge percentage of homes. Then you have a telephone, the mobile, and suddenly social networks still. They took about 5 to 10 years to grow. In less than 5 months, ChatGPT got to a peak of 100 million users very, very quickly. Anyway, so people is reacting to this. We need to name it. We need to know what these new beings that surround us are. They are the fallacious characterizations of large language models. One of the most common is to consider them stochastic parrots. And just let's say, well, it's just repeating things that is read or text that has processed. Nothing to worry about, or nothing really interesting. There's no value to internal workings of it. Ted Chiang called it the blurry JPEG of the web, like a compressed version of all human knowledge. You know, these are Chomsky's super angry, partly because these technologies have been successful in a way that's absolutely contrary to his philosophy of language, basically. And none of the artificial intelligence devices built with Chomsky's idea of how language should be structured ever worked, and the contrary theory produced something that works better than any other. So Chomsky's super angry. It's a lumbering statistical engine for pattern matching. It's shit, and it's only useful for plagiarism. He's super angry with this, and many others are also, because the speed and also the hype of the whole development is certainly too big, right? In many senses. But it's difficult to find the right balance. The inflationary characterizations are also many. We have people talking about human brain equivalents, or genuine authors, accountable entities. They should have rights or responsibility associated, or they're fully sentient people. You know, they have to be liberated from the hands of the big corporations that hold these brains that have a personality and should have rights. And there are more technical intermediary characterizations, artificial reasoners, learners, general pattern machines, Sparky artificial general intelligence, or simply language models, which is still a very open term, model. What's a model of language? Or many people argue they are models of reality through language, and this is an interesting thing to explore later. So there was a time where there was a ceasefire on trying to think what intelligent machines were. And we had these ideas that are very familiar, very close to our philosophy as a research group, that, well, you know, machines can perform good in well-structured environments with explicit rules, and obviously anything you can mathematize to a level of explicit algorithmic encoding, a machine will do fine, right? But real life is very different. We have very ambiguous relationships, very complex and emergent properties in between. Common sense doesn't seem to be reducible to any kind of rule. And language belongs to a different category to any other well-structured game. And well, computers can do good. They did good on calculus very long ago. They did good on chess playing, and they might be doing very good on, you know, spreadsheets or databases, but they will never reach human competence. But this ceasefire is obviously over. Sorry. Benchmarks have been a very nice tool for philosophers to settle ontological debates, right? Because, you know, like, for example, the Turing test. You say, well, whenever a machine is able to have a conversation with a human in a manner that's totally impossible to distinguish whether you're talking to a machine or to a human, well, then machines will reach intelligence. And everybody's happy with that, because machines don't reach that level. So we are all happy to identify machines as not intelligent, and to identify humans as having a special property. But when the benchmark is met by the machine, then things start to change. Now everybody agrees that the Turing test is outdated. Nobody wants to use it anymore because that will automatically make machines intelligent or human-like. In human and computer interaction, they are mostly indistinguishable. You can have a very long conversation. One of the biggest applications of artificial intelligence is character AI, where people spend hours talking to a character of any kind, maybe someone famous, or a manga character that he or she wants to have an interaction with, or a superstar, or a philosopher, and it's hard to distinguish. And obviously there is the whole industry of artificial intelligence girlfriends, mostly, but I assume there will be boyfriends as well, but the big money is on girlfriends, unfortunately. And many more that it's just like very hard to distinguish between. There's a whole industry also in China, more than here, but it will come here very fast, of bringing to life, well, not to life quotation marks, obviously, friends or family members that died and had a sufficiently rich digital legacy to train an artificial intelligence model and have the experience of talking to these people, at least. This is bizarre and awkward for us, but I imagine that something similar happened when photographs were available and people had photographs as a way of remembering the real person. This time the photograph talks and makes gestures and is like a video, but these things are happening. And some people, at least now that the thing is coming to our surrounding, many people cannot distinguish. Probably some people didn't distinguish photographs from reality at the beginning because that was so shocking to have such a high quality reproduction of the image, and they thought this was even dangerous, that was capturing the soul, and some photographers were forbidden in many places because that was and now we obviously distinguish a photograph from a real person. There's no problem, there is no danger there. Who knows, maybe we will get so good at the identifying artificial intelligence that it won't generate the same feeling. But right now, for many people, it's indistinguishable whether they are talking to an artificial intelligence or a real human. AI is better than, I could have quotes here, references and so on, but I didn't have the time to put them, and it's perhaps unnecessary. Better language understanding than average humans, than doing summaries or all kinds of language examinations like EGA, where you have to do a rewrite or something, is much better than any human. Well, than most humans, not any human. Better than professional in some tasks, like doctors in some specific tasks, not all of them yet. We don't know. That better than average in human, the average humans in most exams, like official exams. Even they can imitate philosophers. There is a paper on artificial intelligence creating paragraphs written by Daniel Dennett, and professional philosophers not being able to make the difference. You read it and, oh, this is Dennett. Ah, no, this is artificial intelligence. And it's just or the other way around, right? Perhaps not surprisingly, maybe what we do is not so creative and amazing, but it's extending. Okay, so, but this is not enough. If benchmarks like the external surface manifestation of behavior is perhaps not enough to explicitly qualify what an object is, right? We know this from biology. Maybe you have a certain behaving system that can perform like a bacteria, but you won't call it a living system unless there are some internal mechanisms that are already operating. And so I take this from Simondon, who wrote Du mode d'existence des objets techniques, second part of his PhD thesis, became a very important book, where he tries to analyze why most of humanities and philosophy in general has been so technophobic and so ignorant of the internal workings of technical objects. And he tried to identify real essence on technical objects, on the process of concretization, and try to study the internal workings and the associated milieu, how a technical object connects to the environment, and through this connection becomes what it is, and this a kind of analysis of technical objects that is not based on the intentions of the creators or on the attribution of the users, but the kind of ontological approach to what the object is. And this has had a lot of influence on object-oriented ontology, for example, and many others. I want to take the spirit of this. I'm not going to be a strict Simondonian, also because it's very complicated to translate his framework to digital objects, although Juk Hui has done that exactly. But I want to just get a taste of what large language models are depending on their internal working and architecture. This is crazy. Too much to explain. Okay, so the good news is that this has taken me months of analysis, and it's all on the paper that Lola and myself have written, and you can go into the details. You can save 3 months of your life in about 1 hour. You can get the simple yet deep explanation of how it works, like in 10 pages, with a beautiful diagram that I've built to explain this architecture. It's very difficult because the knowledge is spread over many different papers, because part of the industry doesn't want you to know how it works. There are very good videos online, better and better ones. I wrote this a year ago, and now it's like there are better explanations than mine, perhaps, I'm sure, but I haven't. I need to sell my book, well, my paper, so I'm gonna explain mine. And so this is the process that the whole input suffers, so to speak, through this digital machine. And we're up. So in order to understand the diagram, it's important to see. I decided to paint from yellow to blue the transformation. That's why they call transformer. Transformer is the technology that has permitted to build large language models, which are a type of generative artificial intelligence. Yeah, for you to situate a bit the big families of, and is also part of the machine learning and deep learning subfamilies of artificial intelligence. So and they're called transformers because they transform an input, perhaps not very kind of specific name, and through a set of operators. So the operators will be shown, which are all matrices. It's all matrix multiplication. And this, Simondon will love this. This is now getting concretized in matter a lot there, because they are building processors that are almost hardware translating the whole architecture, and it's making material systems that are functionally integrated with a structure, and function is perfectly mapping into the same material device. But this is another issue. Right now, imagine this is purely digital, let's say, right? So the input is going to be transformed along the whole transformation process by operators. And now we're going to explore a little bit how this works. Okay, so the input, we are familiar. I hope you are familiar with this. If you're not, just go and play, please. Enjoy. It's fun. It's crazy. If I input elephants don't play, the basic, now it has a conversational shape. If you say elephants don't play, maybe the large language model will respond, what do you mean? What are you talking about? But the underlying technology is about predicting the next word, okay? So if you input elephants don't play, it will try to guess what is the next word, and elephants don't play chess might be the output. It is the output. If you play with GPT 3.5 or 4, that's the official output if you play it that way. Which is the title of one book by Hubert Dreyfus that thought computers couldn't talk in open, common sense-based conversational games like the ones we can play today. Okay, we're going to see how this chess is produced from the input stream elephants don't play. Okay, so first the input is tokenized and encoded, so transformed into numbers. You can play with that. I said it. I'm going to go fast over this, I'm sorry, because I want to go to others parts. And then it's transformed into an embedding. So the embedding is a big matrix of 2056. That was the old, now perhaps to a million input is crazy, to a space of about 56,000 dimensions. That means that every token, that we have to think a token as every word, is 3 quarters of a word on average. But for us, it's easier to understand that one token is one word. So every word will be identified by a long string of a few thousand numbers, right? And one way to understand the embedding is, and sometimes called the semantic space, semantic between quotation marks, is that inside this multidimensional space, the term cat and the term tiger will be closed in some dimensions, right? Most of dimensions, because they are similar, they are animals, but perhaps in size and habitat, they might be separated. What does it mean in size and habitat? There is no label for each dimension, right? Each dimension is just a dimension, and you have associated numbers in each dimension. So when we say size dimension, is that cat will be closer to Roomba, watermelon, and chair than it will be to car, building, or tiger, right? Things that in the dimension that could represent size, things of the same size will be closer. That means they have similar number. In habitat, well then, tiger will be closer to, or cat will be closer to the Roomba, sofa, and human than to crocodile. I don't know. So this is a way to understand, but it's only a way of understanding because there's very risky anthropomorphization, is that the embedding already situates each token in a conceptual space, right? But it's huge conceptual space. Then goes positional encoding. It's not the same to say John Searle invented the Chinese room thought experiment than the Chinese room thought experiment invented John Searle, right? They are the same tokens, but they have very different position and they mean very different things. So in order for the transformer to know this spatial relationship that usually translate into grammatical relationships or all the types of relationships, there has to be a positional encoding. And this is a very weird method that I don't fully understand, in which a sine and cosine are added to the embedding so that further processing can guess the relative position of each token by playing with these sinusoidal additions to the, and we keep having a matrix of the same size. Obviously these two will be added, and we have embedding, like conceptual characterization, if you want, together with the positional encoding in the same matrix. Then we go to the attention mechanism. This is the most, in 2017, this was the big innovation that is the origin of the Cambrian explosion in artificial intelligence. Attention is all you need, is the name of the title, and we just submitted a paper, Marta, Pablo, and me. Attention is all they need, having to do with the economy of attention and with a similar title, different content. But the attention mechanism also works in a complex mathematical manner. But it's all about transforming the input with other matrices. But here there is a kind of a questioning and keys, and it's a game of situating relationships of the positional encoding. What the attention mechanism does, well, they are 96 in ChatGPT 3. We don't know how many there are in ChatGPT 4, and the next generation of transformers, we don't know, but it's certainly going to go increasing. Not necessarily, but in many occasions it does. So there are, in parallel, 96 attention heads looking for relationships inside the matrix. And basically, I call it's everywhere all at once. So they try to connect, for example, grammatical relationships, what is the subject and the verb, but they might be looking for a longer time scale of the input and look into the narrative plot. Who is the assassin? At the end you have to discover, or maybe instructions of a receipt that you have to follow in order. So the attention mechanism connects what is relevant and reduces the mathematical value of relationships that are surely not relevant for the processing. Okay, so then there is the feed-forward network. This is more familiar for those of you that are familiar with neural network architecture. This is the same as the 1960s perceptron, mostly. I mean, there's no magic. There's some improvements, but it's very old technology, if you want, applied at a massive scale. And so millions of parameters. Here, the system expands its dimensionality. Up to now, it was relative big size, but constrained by the input. And here it expands a lot, and there will be 96 iterations of attention feed-forward network, attention feed-forward network, and each time attention has 96 attention heads. So this is going to cycle around a lot, and the artificial neural network, the 96 artificial neural networks, one after the other in each looped block, is what traditionally has been considered that encodes some knowledge about the input. Up to now, we only have spatial relationships, attentional mechanisms of connecting, and here's what I call everything everywhere. So this is where internal relationship between it's difficult not to anthropomorphize, but between the terms, the tokens, right? Input. But if you want, if there is, for example, if the ChatGPT is going to compute elephants don't play chess, it's on the neural network where this decision is mostly done. Because chess is not closer to play than football or basketball. Basketball will be semantically closer because it's more used, whatever. But chess is in the input data in a manner that not only has the system read, so to speak, elephants don't play chess, but also there is a poetic value and a number of knowledge, contextual knowledge of the input data that is encoded on the neural network. It's difficult to explain how this knowledge is encoded. There was a huge discussion in the 80s, and nobody exactly knows. So this is part of the thing here. Then we will see the big numbers. It's impossible because we are talking about trillions of parameters. Nobody knows. There's no theory of why ChatGPT is so good at what it's doing. And then part of the magic is here. So finally, the output. So we have a huge matrix that's been like crunched through a lot of processing, and now we are only going to output a single token, right? So we've been working right now with 2056 by 50,000 huge matrix, and now the output is going to be just 1 point. So a new string is going to be created out of the previous processing that says, out of the full vocabulary, if you want, all the possible tokens, 50,000, what is the score of being the most probable next token for each token, okay? So this is usually 3 or 5 will have a high score, and the rest will be nearly 0. Elephants don't play basketball, elephants don't play chess, elephants don't play computer games, whatever, right? And the token with the highest number will be given priority on the output. And that's it. This is repeated once and again with autoregression. Once this next elephants don't play chess is outputted, then the system will reprocess everything, most probably add a dot, pre-process everything, and say, this is a book by Hubert Dreyfus, blah, blah, blah. Each token is iterated once and again, until we interrupt by writing a new question, whatever, or very smart, which I don't have this capacity as a relatively smart person, I consider myself, but I don't have the capacity to know when to stop talking. And ChatGPT certainly outperforms me on that. So one output is a token that's a halt token, and I'm done. Now you talk. Okay. Okay. Can I have 20 minutes, half an hour? Okay. The training is where all the magic works. I needed to explain the processing because the training is very much dependent on the architecture. So first there is an initialization of the machine. All the parameters here, all the purple matrices are made of random numbers at the beginning, just random numbers all around. You input the same, elephants don't play, and this is computed, and the result is nonsense. Elephants don't play China. Elephants don't play Fodor, whatever. It doesn't make even grammatical sense. But now we have a potential response. Elephants don't play Fodor. How far is Fodor from chess? Okay? And this, not only Fodor, we don't have one single output. We have a whole matrix, a whole string, because we have a score of each token. How probable would this token be the next one on the string elephants don't play? Do you follow me? Am I explaining myself? No. So now we know the right answer is chess. So the right answer is 1 for chess, 0 for the rest of the tokens.
But this is from the beginning. This is given to the
Yes.
chess is the right answer.
Yes, exactly. Well, this is a very good question. I'm just going to throw into the machine all the human literature. Everything has been written in every context. But I will start with small chunks. And elephants don't play, for example, or perhaps a full 3 sentences of Wikipedia entry article, and try to guess the next token, only the next token. And this, obviously, is an art, is a dark art of how to train these models. Some knowledge is out there, the general knowledge is out there, but then there are many tricky aspects that the order in which information is presented, we don't know that. The many things we don't know. But in general, the approach is, I'm going to train it with text. And it's considered an unsupervised learning because there is no human or other machine telling the system that's doing good or bad other than what is already contained on the input. Well, you have hidden a part of the input, which is the next token, but this is, and you know, and you're going to correct and train the system based on the right answer, but the answer is only the next token. So it's sufficient for you to have a lot of data. You don't need to have this data very structured or anything. You don't, right? It's sufficient for you to have but I'm gonna go, other types of learning involve other ways, and we will see later. So basically, in this, it's called pre-training. It's a bad name because it's the whole training happens here, or 90% of the training, but it's called pre-training. And the pre-training, so basically, is guess the next token. And so the system is going to produce randomly a distribution of probabilities of every token that should follow elephants don't play. We know the right answer is 1 for chess, 0 for the rest, and now we can compute the loss function. That's how it's called. It's the distance between the right answer and the wrong one. And now I can go and adjust all the parameters one by one, a small step towards the right answer, all the way back to the first layer of the embedding. I'm going to go all the 96 neural networks and attention heads, everything. I'm going to try to change, make small changes, all back to the very first. And everything is trained like that, all at once. This is part of the magic. It's a very holistic system, from the very input to the. In the old times, 10 years ago, in the old times, the embedding was done separately and more systematically. The natural language processing tried to make good embeddings, vector to vector. Well, there are different names for embeddings. Oh, this is a very good. And then I plug this into a grammatical engine, you know. But now everything is trained all at once. Everything all at once, and it's basically gradient descent, small error corrections. But this is done once and again, a sextillion times. These are huge, ridiculous numbers. And this is the basic optimization. Then there are, and after this is repeated millions of times, it takes months with the computational capacity of Microsoft to train a large language model of this kind. At the end of this process, we have a foundation model. A foundation model is capable to predict the next token of all the input data quite accurately, and just by art of magic is also capable to do many things. Because by predicting the next token, surprisingly, you can do a lot of things. But there are theories of the human brain that hypothesize predictive coding. This is the only thing we do. We just try to predict what is going to happen next, and by doing that, we can, I don't know how to say, but deploy a complex set of cognitive capacities. And this is called the foundation model. But the foundation model is still quite brute. It's like a dragon that has to be trained, and this is where training comes. Fine-tuning. So there are different types of fine-tuning. One is task-specific. So, for example, we give it an text input, and we try to force the translation. We said, you have to translate this, and then translation, if it's accurate, now you, this is part of reinforcement learning. If it does, so now you have not only the next token, you have the whole result, and you try to punish the system if it translates badly, and you give positive feedback. You reinforce positively the connections of the whole network if it translates well. Or, for example, summarization. This has been a very widely used technique. You input the whole Wikipedia article except the summary at the beginning, and you ask the system to do a summary. And so you have the brute model, the foundation model, and then you train it on a specific tasks. Or, for example, having conversations with humans, and you train it, and you punish. No, you were very, I don't know, rancid in this conversation, or you talk too much in this conversation, or you were too synthetic, and you keep adjusting the system. And then you have reinforcement learning with human feedback. So the previous one was you have many conversations, you have a lot of Wikipedia articles, you have a lot of translations, and you start matching and training. And then you have reinforcement learning with human feedback. Now humans enter into the scene. Typically, by the way, underpaid workers in Pakistan or India or places where many workers know English, and very cheap cognitive labor. Amazon doesn't only sell socks and books, it sells human labor at the it's called Amazon Torque. If you want to explore that, it's quite amazing. Okay, so you have a lot of humans interacting with the machines and training them in tasks, usually to incorporate ethical values and other types of quality checks, right? And finally, there's one type of learning that is called one-shot or few-shot learning, which is basically instructions. You give an instruction. Have you ever done this kind of IQ test or test of where you have some examples so you know how to respond to a new game or something, right? You have 2 questions, so 2 examples, and then you are given a 3rd item, and you just follow the rule, right? So these kind of things but they are in the prompt. So we have a better experience of this. The previous type of training is more technical and done at a huge scale, but the one-shot learning is the way we interact with large language models. But very often they have a meta prompt, so to say. Whenever you talk to a large language model, some information is already added. There was a leak recently of OpenAI. That's where instructions are given on how it should respond. Kindly or whatever with different, sometimes it's called constitutional prompting, but that's different thing. Okay, so anthropomorphization. Usually we talk about anthropomorphizing, and this is a danger because, anthropomorphizing implies that we project human qualities to the machine, and we know the danger of this. This is overemphasized, in my opinion. It's obviously very important, but there are 2 types of anthropomorphization that people don't talk enough. One is the way in which during the design or the training, we shape the machine with a human form, right? We've seen that. And the other is the way in which is one way of anthropomorphizing is to translate how the machine works to the Anthropocene, to the human scale. And I'm going to do a bit of both very quickly. So the computational cost of training this monster is huge, 175 billion parameters, now a few trillion. Used to produce a 250 token summary. So imagine you introduce in ChatGPT a short essay, 2,000 words essay, like the one we do in my course, and ask to write the abstract. That's 350 trillion flops, floating point operation. 350 trillion. One way to envision what is a flop is to make a multiplication between 5 digits by 5 digits. And I said, well, I tried to do that. How much it takes? I said, well, maybe it takes for someone that's trained like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, someone is very good at maths. It took me more than 3 minutes, and I said, fuck it, too much. But imagine that you are super trained on flop operations, just to compute one token will take a few million years of a human doing the calculations, right? This is super crazy. And I have this slide, the next slide, but I wanted to put it now. Do you remember Johnson was very famous because he said, you have this Chinese room argument. A machine will never understand Chinese because, you get the Chinese input symbol and you have these rules of processing, you have all the grammar of Chinese, everything, and then you output the symbol, and obviously the person in the middle has understood nothing. It's just following instructions. It doesn't understand Chinese. Although from outside, it might look like the machine is understanding, right? It happens that, so this was for me, very convincing thought experiment. Obviously, nobody managing these tokens will understand what they mean. But the thing is that CERN will have to live and die millions of lives in order to output a single Chinese symbol. So I'm not sure, this is one of the conclusions of this talk, I'm not sure if intuitions at the scale of a human life, like, yes, I'm looking at an instruction, work 7, 8, 9, 13, 23 orders of magnitude bigger scale. I don't know, this is just an open question, but it's out of reach. Anthropomorphizing. If I make, how do you call that? It's a mannequin, right? I make a mannequin for a shop. It's made out of plastic. It has a human shape, but it's obviously not human. We have a capacity to distinguish it because it's evident that it's not. But we are building machines that have a level of, it's not plastic. It's not obviously not human, even if human shaped. It's so deeply, I wouldn't call it humanized, but so deeply shaped by human textuality in this case, that we are on the frontier of not being fully capable of understanding. And the training is even worse. I'm not going to into much detail. I don't think these machines are purposeful, like full purpose, purposeful, but they're certainly purpose structured, because our human digital legacy, textual legacy, is purposefully structured. You have many stories where characters have purpose, and the structure of this purpose is there, right? And it's also purpose bounded, because once the foundation model is pre-trained, then interactions with humanly structured purposeful relationships, like making summaries or translations, but mostly human feedback, has also bounded, the monster within human purpose bounded limits, right? So it doesn't do bad things, like telling people how to kill each other or that kind of thing, right? So this is an important part of the anthropomorphization of these machines. They have been made human-shaped in this purpose-structured and purpose-bounded manner. Okay. Still more things. I'm not... Okay. So this was the revolution until recently, and now there is a new hype. These machines will be the nucleus of autonomous agents. And basically, there's an explosion after ChatGPT, chatbots, after the way in which technology is accessible broadly for us today, like a kind of chat conversation, like a WhatsApp conversation with ChatGPT. The new frontier that's here is agents. And obviously, a raw ChatGPT is no agent. It has, in fact, no internal state. Everything that I've shown you, all the processing happens, and when it's over, no change of state happens in the whole processing. Only you have an input that includes the new token, but there is no internal state, no memory, no trace, no change. So it would be very weird agent that is unaffected by what it does, right? So it's always, you've seen Memento, the movie? It's just great. It's exactly the same. Yeah, even worse, because at least Memento has a short-term memory, but it's instantaneously, ChatGPT has no memory whatsoever. Only the output it has, which is very similar to what the character in Memento does, that writes, parts of its goals. But well, I don't remember the end, but it was confusing whether he was a real agent or not, because he was potentially tricked by the writing of what he was driving himself to do. Well, but these systems are being expanded to make of them autonomous agents. Extended memory systems, planning strategies where the same large language model develops different, splits a big task into parts, and then it's like almost like what you do when you have a very complex thing to do. You perhaps split it in, and you write it down, like super complex holidays. I'm going to write it down. Oh, we're going to have first to this hotel, whatever. They do the same thing, right? They try to make the large language model to write the plan and rewrite it and reflexively evaluate it. And this was a surprise when someone discovered that once you ask ChatGPT to do a task and then you say, "Are you sure? Can you please go through it step by step again?" Oh, no. He had the capacity to improve it upon demand, right? A plan. So this kind of capacity of large language models are being extended and exploited. They use tools, they connect it to APIs, which are other software machines that provide a kind of body of interaction with things like scrapping, searching online, modifying a PDF file, whatever. And not surprisingly, multi-agent interactions. Since an agent might be stupid, maybe 200 agents are smarter on doing the task. And very often, agentic capacities come out of collective capacity of large language models. But they're not doing very good. Unlike the benchmarks that I mentioned before, when compared to humans on actions like buying a good, cheap t-shirt on Amazon, or trying to write code, or doing things online, they score still quite bad, like 14%, and humans do 80% of quality, whatever it is. Whereas in other tasks, it's like humans score 70%, 80%, and the machine is 90, 95%, just to give you a raw approximation to how good a large language model do on agency. Okay. So the reason might be that transformers are not autonomous agents, and I just want to distinguish events from actions. So if you are pushed by the wind, you are not an agent, but if you are jumping, you are an agent. Their actions are different to events, and we can be agents or patients. And when actions are processed intentionally or purposefully, so it's full of purpose from within, not just from outside, or not just the structure of purpose like textuality can have, by the agent for the agent. I'm not going to go into details. We've been working on agency for very long, and Hans Jonas versus Rosenbluth, Wiener, and Bigelow is a nice, for me, starting point for this debate on teleology and machines, and there are many insights, and many of you have contributed to this. And the paper I wrote with Ezekiel and Marik Rode, it's been cited quite a lot in the literature. And according to this paper, and I think it's intuitively approachable, a system is an agent when it acts first when it is a system that is self-individuated, when you can distinguish the system, is actively distinguishing itself from the environment. When it acts according to norms or viabilities, norms that are self-generated, and when the interaction between the system and the environment is asymmetrically laden to the agent is in control, if you want, right? Not the environment. I can be an autonomous agent and be moved by someone. This could happen, but I wouldn't be an agent even if I have my own norms and even if I am self-individuated, right? So the three conditions has to be met for an agent, and ChatGPT is not an individually self-defined. we've seen the procedure and the architecture is externally imposed, rigidly, materially, and even digitally determined by external programmers, and the test that is passively somehow digested. The normativity comes from outside, is always being trained externally by punishment or by next token prediction. And the interactional asymmetry, well, it might be satisfied in some occasions, but since it's purely reactive, so to speak, has no internal memory, it's difficult to say that it's inside the driving force of the interaction. We can extend that with extended memory, with the way I mentioned before, but it's not going to solve this fundamental problem. So now I'm going to go very quickly on some ideas of then what is it, right? What is it? Okay, so I try to distinguish. We need to refresh the vocabulary somehow, because these things are doing things. So doing with the quotation marks, because they're not agents, but they do things. So I think it's safe to say that they are automatic systems instead of autonomous. And they operate. Doing is acting, is human thing, agency, human or animal, or natural thing, if you want. Operations are externally defined procedures that machines can do, and we can call them language automata, which I think is a good characterization. We are accustomed to other kinds of automata, like a clock or a small robot that moves like that, just mechanically, that's fine. We have linguistic automata now, and they are capable of performing linguistically. And I think it's interesting to call them interlocutors. We are still on the chatbot arena, right? Interlocutors, because they are well, in interlocutor, the term, I was crazy trying to find a good characterization, and suddenly interlocutor means two things. One is that you mediate between two, I don't know, Hamas and Israel, whatever. That's an interlocutor, right? And here the mediator is between human inheritance of the whole knowledge, because this is there as an input corpus, then I will talk about that. So you can, it's just an interlocutor. It doesn't have an intentionality of its own, but it somehow permeates the whole intentionality that's structured in the textuality of the training corpus. And also, it's an interlocutor in the sense that you can have an interlocutionary experience with it. But although this is a bit phantasmatic, so in a sense, it's a library that talks, right? Or now maybe also multimedia library, right? Because it can process sound and vision and everything. But it's a ghost-like, it's a phantasmic automaton as well. And this is very important. There are two senses of ghost. In one term, or one sense of ghost-like nature of these machines, is that they bring dead text, the dead text corpus, to conversational life. But I would say life within quotation marks, because the other phantasmic aspect is perhaps more important. Which is the fact that we take them as genuine agents, and we build a conversation with them. But this is what a ghost is. A ghost, well, we know doesn't exist, but how can it come to life, so to speak? Well, what happens when we interact with others? And I think Linguistic Bodies is a very good book to understand this. We start coordinating behavior with others, but very often the other fails or is not there. And we still can act as if it was there, right? And so partial acts are turn taking in a conversation. And I can have by repetition through and complex regulatory capacities of interacting with others, I end up having the capacity to incorporate the absent other. And I can have a simulated conversation if you want it. And this is an important part of the ghost-like relationship with ChatGPT. We are attributing and we are projecting things, but this time the ghost is also excorporated. So it's not only incorporated that I take it as it's there, but it's actually, you know, the hallucination as a very important textual component that feedbacks into me. When someone has a ghost experience, it usually amplifies a sound in the, you know, abandoned house, and amplifies a random noise and creates an illusion of real voice or steps or whatever. Well, this time the hallucination is facilitated by the fact that it's text being delivered to us, but I think the human addition of this absent other into the very interaction with ChatGPT is very important to understand what it is, right? Or how we interact with it. The associated milieu of ChatGPT is other humans and other machines interacting. Okay, and now I want, and very briefly, I'm finishing right now. Embodiments, obviously, you know, this is so important in the revolution of embodied cognitive science and everything, and surely this is just like good old artificial intelligence, it's just a machine, it has no living and lived body, embodiment, this is failing, these machines will never be intelligent because they don't have a living body. So far, so good. I think there is some truth there, obviously, but this is not different to other technologies. And another point that's been made by Anthony Quemero, large language models don't have sensory-motor embodiment either. They only have interacted with text, but never with objects, and never carried out actions in the real world. This last part is already too old. I mean, the new generation of robots are based on large language models and transformer architecture. They're multimodal, fairly efficient. It's a bit scary, but it's developing. But we don't know much about this yet, so I cannot evaluate how much of the sensory motor embodiment is like super efficient or anything. What is very interesting is that foundation models are, I'm not sure I'm gonna find the term now. They can transfer knowledge somehow. This is almost magic, truly. I mean, it's just the trillions of parameters. We don't know what's happening in there. But when you train a large language model only with text, and then you can train it with videos, it brings great part of the knowledge of text into the videos, and then the video training improves the textual performance. This is amazing. So they are putting these brains into robots, and they're fucking capable of doing things, and they can improve, and they get improving every day. And obviously they do this in simulation and shit, and apparently they are improving fast, but I won't go into that. There are two types of embodiment that nobody talks about, and three types, sorry. One is the textual embodiment. We talk about textual corpus. Corpus in Latin means body, and I think we are lacking a theory of what it means to have all human textuality digitalized. What is that as an object? It's something, well, a library, right? But it's weird. And from the embodied cognitive science point of view, to my knowledge, we have no theory of what a huge library is as a product of human cognition, but this is how much of human experience is translatable, structurally isomorphic. I don't think we have a good theory of that, and I think we need a theory of what a textual corpus is to understand the embodiment of these systems. Then there is material embodiment. Energy, water, supply chain. This is the devastating because it's taking so many resources. Sam Altman, which is the prophet of this thing, is the head of OpenAI. Just every week he drops something like his fucking dream that's a nightmare for most of humanity, and one of them was Stargate. He wants to have all this processing power for his next generation super artificial intelligence, and he called Stargate as an energy consumption of 5 nuclear plants. I mean, this is just amazing, only for one brain. We never had this kind of a scale of human enterprise. This idea of $7 trillion invested on hardware I don't know. I don't know of any. Perhaps the Second World War, the Cold War, sorry, had mobilized so much resources for a crazy idea. But and here is something very worrying of human agency, is that because large language models consume so much, and because they are still bad in agency, but this being bad in agency might be compensated by having millions of agents trying things. I call this Takashi Castle's type of technology. You know, Takashi's Castle was in Spanish humor amarillo. Humor amarillo was, you put 2,000 Japanese people trying to reach a goal, and they fail because there was all traps and, you know, physical, just random collisions, and one of them will get to the end. Nobody knows how. It's not the best sport person. It's not like there's another TV show, the Ninja whatever, US Ninja whatever, where it's one single person is super good at, you know, jumping and everything and can complete. This in Takashi's Castle is just like you throw a million Chinese people or whatever. This is very racist, but it was literally like that. They were actually Japanese. I'm sorry for Japanese, but then one succeeds. But you know. In order to do this, to be successful in artificial intelligence agency, you need to have a lot of resources, like material resources. And this is something weird in the history of computing. It only happened at the very early history of computing, but 10 years ago, a hacker, 14-year-old hacker in Singapore, and Elon Musk could do mostly the same thing with a computer. You know, programming, and you know, it wasn't a big difference between what a human could do with a computer. Right now, yes, because the computing, the consume and the overwhelming gigantic scale of large language models makes a lot of power symmetries on access to these resources. And then is this crazy idea of Sam Altman as well, of the $1 billion US company with one person. It's just one person, and the rest is artificial intelligence. And this worries me. The 1 billion company consumes the energy of a lot of people that will get this energy and water removed from their survival basic needs. Anyway, and then there is the social embodiment of how we use and how we train ChatGPT. Okay, and this is the last part. So, how is human agency transformed by ChatGPT, which is part of his mode of existence because we coexist together. We always like partnering ChatGPT, at least. Other technologies might see. Well, is it an extension of human cognitive agency? Is it an assistant? That's what they try to sell us. Well, there's a big tradition in embodied and embedded and extended cognitive science to think of digital gadgets as extensions of humans and powers. But this time, I think the interesting part is that the extension looks more like social extension. Like when you are a boss of a company, or you are a PhD supervisor, and you brutalize your PhD students to make summaries for you of whatever you need. And this is more like enhanced social agency, or agency that's socially enhanced by subduing and enslaving other people. But this time, they are language automata that are doing the job for you. So in this sense, human agency is going to be augmented very asymmetrically, as we've seen by the energy and material embodiment of these language models. But we can go a bit further. This is going to trigger a fascinating human-machine master-slave dialectics. And have you seen these are Ray-Ban glasses by Meta? They have a camera on them and a small speaker here that you can hear, and not many other people, unless they put their ear very close. And the fantastic thing about this is that the large language model is observing what you are doing and is giving you instructions. Maybe not all the time, but one of the demos is a person is cooking and said, "Hey, you forgot to add salt." "Oh, thanks," and you just hear this voice. It's just like crazy. But just imagine, this is the master-slave dialectics. We humans are going to have many digital assistants doing the dirty work of PhD students for my slavery, digital slavery, but we will become slaves of the machine as well, because we're gonna have continuous, could have continuous instructions by machines. This is funny, but it's not so much. And if you are a Uber driver or you are a, I don't know, a biker delivering food, you already have an artificial intelligence boss that's much more efficient and cruel than any human bosses. Well, maybe not any, but most human bosses. Okay, and this is my last new term, mid-tended agency. So I think this is the most fascinating of all the insights that I think I've approached in this research, which is the mid-tended agency is something between intended, intentional agency, and extended agency. So I have the intentional agency when it's me internally that builds the purposeful action. Extended is when I do it with extended tools. Perhaps I'm writing a novel or a new paper, and the pen and paper or the screen and the computer are part of the agency producing system because I feedback loop a lot through them, and I'm not capable of writing in my mind and dictating paper as complex as the one I can write through the computer or through pen and paper. But this mid-tended is interesting. The mid-tended agency is one in which the machine is being trained on my past writings and perhaps all my digital or even voice or all my history. If I put these Ray-Ban glasses in my daughter, 10 years later, a machine will have, all the input at least and part of the output of my daughter and could anticipate the next. This is the autocomplete thing, right? But at a very sophisticated scale, and it already happens. Copilot for programmers are having this weird experience where they are writing computer code with their style, and suddenly the machine is anticipating and providing what you would have written yourself. And this is weird. And this is what I call the mid-tended agency, where you are augmented. Like this is an example of an illustration I did with ChatGPT, DALL-E 3. Like the pen is writing what I would have written based on my past. Obviously, I still have creativity of my own, whatever, but 99% of the cases, I'm finding the text that I would have written. And this happens, who was this? Hemingway said, write drunk, edit sober. And it happens so often that you are writing in a flow, and suddenly you find something written and you say, that's good. And some of the times you write something, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant, but you wrote it, right? So suddenly there is a third contender here. Someone injecting text that you can find as yours, but written by somebody else. This is crazy, and this is probably going to happen at different scales of human creativity. And this is it. This cyborg mid-tended agency. And I'm going to... So basically what we have transitioned from interlocutionary automata to this intralocutionary agency of enhancing human agency with many different implications. And yes, I should just want to mention one thing. My conclusion, okay, large language models, they're not agents yet. Maybe with some extensions, maybe capacity to self-modify, maybe with more complex histories, they could approximate our experience of agency or living agency, maybe. But maybe we are also approaching something important that I call a strong digitality or deep digitality. We know that life and mind emerge from deep materiality, from the fact that matter manifests itself in ways that only emergent structures can channel, closure of constraints, emergent capabilities that can only be understood as operational closure of, but still materiality always providing novelty that is then channeled by the emergent superstructure. We are approaching a point where the depth of digitality approximates. It's still far from material depth, but 10 to the power of 23, and now we're probably talking to 10 to the power of 27 because the data that I provided in this explanation is already very old, 3-4 years old. Is the training of ChatGPT 3, and we are already 4 plus, and who knows what is being trained right now, and probably out there in a year time. More is different, like Anderson said, and trillions of parameters, 6 trillions of operations, emergent capabilities are there in the digital world, and we need better theories for that. Thank you very much. Oops, too much. Sorry it took so long, but
thank you so much for this amazing talk. I'm not sure we have time for a round for everyone, so maybe we just start with anyone who has a question.
Pass the microphone, and we will do it or wherever. If anybody is urgently needing to have a question, obviously has priority, but.
I can bring the ice.
Go ahead.
If I'm allowed, because sometimes I'm asked to.
You shouldn't, but.
Where, well, it's super interesting. Thanks very much for the talk. And where do you detect interactive interfaces in this, in the whole thing? Like, because there's a part that has to do with kind of an algorithm that is running, or some kind of you describe the architecture of something. Okay? But what I think is super interesting is that you have an architecture that is basically it requires lots of data that are kind of data sets,
Yeah,
that are more or less fixed or whatever, or they are well, maybe they are changeable, whatever. But what is most interesting for me is to try to identify where are the interfaces for interaction of that. Whether in the sense that when you put the system to interact with a human, then of course everything complexifies because there's a loop, right? With a human and then the human machine and then another loop and another loop, and then you have the human, and this brings you somewhere very different from both the human and whatever is happening. Right? But apart from that obvious interface, let's say the human interacting with the machine there, what are the other because the idea of agency has to do with how you define the interaction, right? And whether you are able to change those interactive interfaces, we'll call it that way. So where else do you see these systems, like places where this kind of plastic, or it's clear that the machine, the human, this is the plasticity there in some sense because there's a human interacting with the machine. But where else would you say that there are, like, would you identify like an interface for interaction that is being changed or modulated?
that's difficult. I mean, the digital world is very structured. So even when ChatGPT is interacting with humans, it's text-based. You have your box where to write the answer and everything. And to my knowledge, ChatGPT doesn't have the capacity to plastically restructure that. But it's complicated. Most of the time that a tool is provided to ChatGPT is through an API, which is a way of structuring interaction between programs. But programs usually add one way of interacting with its user. With the user was a human, and it's just buttons and and a screen. But when you put two computer programs interacting with each other, you have an API, and it's like a strict language where you can transfer commands from one program to another, or queries, or ask for data, or whatever. Interestingly, ChatGPT is capable to learn API and interact with tools that were never in the training set. But then I don't know. I maybe we have to ask Takashi Kegami is like randomly putting crazy physical interfaces to ChatGPT, like physical robots and everything. And I don't know what's coming out of that, really. I haven't read anything that he's written. I know he's doing that, and we'll have to see. But since internal plasticity is missing, it's difficult to, maybe they can creatively, ChatGPT can program, and it could program an API and reprogram it for some purpose given by a prompt by a human beforehand. I also think that ChatGPT has been designed for safety, because it's a major concern in the Silicon Valley crazy artificial intelligence cultural environment. So it's intentionally being defined so it doesn't have goals that spontaneously arise, and it's just like prompt driven. So the human that has full control of the prompt has full control of the dynamics. But right now, this is the situation. What is possible is much more open than what is really operating right now as a digital service for us. But I don't think it's impossible for a large language model to have some plasticity and the capacity to rewrite interfaces. I don't know what could come out of that. Okay, any questions? Technical, social or otherwise?
No sé si podría hacerla en castellano.
Sí, por supuesto. Sí.
Vale, o sea, bueno, pues antes de nada, muchísimas gracias por la charla, me ha apasionado, o sea, realmente la aclaración de por qué realmente, o sea, de cómo funcionan realmente estos modelos de lenguaje y por qué no son agentes, no cumplen esas condiciones necesarias suficientes. Me apasiona un poco desde pues, el campo que estoy intentando yo ahora descubrir, que pues como ya, o sea, investigar, como ya sabéis, es, digamos, pues el impacto que tienen cierto uso de metáforas o terminología en la percepción del público lego sobre estos tipos de cuestiones, sobre esas cuestiones científicas y en sus actitudes pues dentro de las sociedades democráticas, ¿no? Y pues esto, no sé, es un comentario, no sé si tiene mucho esto, pero me apasionaría, digamos, o sea, analizar para este caso el impacto que podrían tener estas aclaraciones en la percepción precisamente del público lego y sus actitudes hacia la IA, porque, no sé, a mí me viene la imagen de mi madre diciendo, esas cosas a mí me dan mucho miedo, a ver si se van a revelar o tal, se les antropomorfiza y se les adjudica este tipo de actitudes como humanas, de ansias de poder, es decir, que no tienen, precisamente por esa incomprensión de la naturaleza real, ¿no? Tú has utilizado diferentes metáforas contrapuestas a la metáfora de la agencia o de la máquina como humano, que si no he entendido mal, ¿no? Una librería que habla o un asistente, ¿no? Que nos ayuda. Si entendiésemos, digamos, estas máquinas como pues, precisamente lo que son a través de estas aclaraciones, pues el impacto que podrían tener, por ejemplo, en las tecnofobias que nacen en la sociedad, etcétera, y en las futuras legislaciones de todas estas cuestiones, no sé. Es un poco un comentario así pero me apasiona, no sé. Voy a leer el artículo y de verdad, pues bueno, muchas gracias por la charla.
Pues en parte, o sea, está muy bien que digas esto porque parte de la motivación de este artículo ha sido la polarización en las metáforas que se han usado para entenderlo. Y sobre todo que a mí me ha irritado un poco que desde las posiciones pues, más de izquierdas o socialmente más críticas, la tendencia ha sido la deflacionaria. No, esto es solamente una máquina estadística, es solamente estocástico. Ingrid Gebru, que es la que acuñó el término de stochastic parrot, es para quitarle peso, ¿no? Y así intentar paliar el efecto social. Sin embargo, yo creo que es muy peligroso quitarle peso o capacidad, porque luego la realidad va a golpearte por otro lado. Y dar con la caracterización adecuada, bueno, habrá muchas, no sea la adecuada, pero con caracterizaciones adecuadas a cada caso, me parece una tarea filosófica muy importante para contener, amplificar, concienciar sobre el impacto de este tipo de tecnologías. Entonces, yo no estaba satisfecho ni con las caracterizaciones deflacionarias ni con las... Aquí ha llegado la superinteligencia, no sé qué. Por ejemplo, Floridi, que no he explotado eso al final, dice que son agentes sin inteligencia. Me hace mucha gracia porque con toda su teoría esto es súper inteligente. Inteligencia viene interlegere, que es leer entre. Y yo sí que creo que son inteligentes sin ser agentes, que es un poquito como la vuelta a lo que dice Floridi. Pero de que los caractericemos bien, estoy muy de acuerdo contigo, que va a depender, pues eso, las políticas, también la motivación de los propios programadores, de usuarios, o sea, un poco de todo lo que rodea a la tecnología, y no tenemos buenas metáforas, porque nada de lo que el ser humano ha hecho hasta ahora tenía esta escala ni esta complejidad. Atribuciones de agencialidad, por ejemplo, que hay muchos estudios de cuando una persona atribuye agencialidad a algo que ve, atribuimos agencialidad muy fácilmente. Por ejemplo, pones una caja que persigue un círculo, como unos dibujos animados, pero simplemente, y la bola hace un movimiento un poco extraño y la otra tarda y ya proyectamos agencialidad. Podría haber sido una bola atada con una cuerda elástica a un cubo, pero como eso es incluso como objeto material sería una cosa muy rara, a nada que vemos movimiento que está correlacionado con otra cosa, solemos proyectar agencialidad. Pero hay que ser más rigurosos, porque es que esto está llegando y de formas muchísimo más sofisticadas que eso, y las consecuencias éticas, políticas, etc. Hay muchos debates sobre quién tiene que ser responsable. Las grandes empresas quieren que se consideren autónomos, porque así ellos se limpian las manos. Johanna Bryson, creo que coincidí con ella en Sussex, que está liderando un movimiento que dice, no, son robots, son esclavos. Y si son realmente esclavos, todo lo que haga tiene que responsabilizarse su dueño, o sea, el humano que lo haga, lo que sea, ¿no? En fin, hay un mogollón de consecuencias, desde las legales hasta las psicológicas, es brutal. Sí.
Apasionante, o sea, de verdad. Creo que te voy a dar la charla.
Bueno, sí, lo que quieras. Yo el friki, no puedo hablar con nadie de esto, así que cualquiera que me agarre...
No sé si seguiré en castellano, en inglés.
Lo que te sientas más cómoda.
Pues en castellano.
Oh, yes, Ben.
All right.
I forgot.
All right, no problem. When you were talking about how ChatGPT works and all the steps, you talked when you ask to summarize a test, if it does bad, we have to punish them. How do you possibly punish an algorithm? I mean, what do you mean by punishing?
Yes, thank you. So basically, you have all the parameter space. It's huge. You have all these operators that transform the input into different matrices. And when you can measure the error, it's like the token prediction. It's the same. But instead of single token, you have a more complex scenario of what the result should be. When you punish, what you do is you weaken the parameters that have produced the result in the wrong direction somehow. And when you reinforce positively, like giving a cookie to your dog to train it, you amplify those that made it closer. This is like intuition. Then the mathematics, for me, is magic. And for many, this is engineering. So we are creating things that we don't fully understand. And the frontier, in artificial intelligence, the frontier between discovery and engineering, between science and engineering, is blurring. So there are scientists trying to understand why this technique works, that someone intuitively thought it would, or randomly found that it worked. And it's just like a very uncanny valley between knowing exactly why it works and it working. It's just crazy. And this is going to increase because we are starting to apply artificial intelligence to the improvement of very artificial intelligence. So there's a beautiful short story by Ted Chiang that was published in the journal Science, where Ted Chiang, that's a science fiction writer, imagines a future where human scientists only do hermeneutics of the super science made by It is unclear whether they are augmented humans or cyborgs or purely artificial intelligence. And human scientists only publish papers about potential explanations of where their theories work, but just very raw approximations. They have no idea. And this is what accessible to humans, and we are approaching this. It's very crazy.
Well, I also think it was very interesting. I learned a lot, and I don't have many things to say because I'm thinking about it. But especially I'm thinking that you are right, and it sounds sensible to say that these systems are not agents in according to the three criteria. But well, maybe we have to go one step, and you have tried to do that. Maybe we have to go one step further and say,
Yes.
well, okay, but
Yes.
what is the emergent behavior? If you don't want to call it agency, what is the emergent behavior of these? What kind of things they do? So, no.
Yeah.
And it's going to be probably more like ecosystems rather than organisms.
Maybe. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I have one thing I haven't explored here that I think is worth exploring is the emergence forms of agency, like the whole company, a company that uses artificial intelligence. Because this kind of human and machine hybrids, I only gave the example of a person writing with Copilot, suggesting things based on your previous papers and your PhD and suggesting the next sentence, and this will be a weird experience, but of a joint agency. But when this is socially and technically enmeshed, I don't know. We need to think about this. Every detail here deserves a lot of thinking. I have these doubts. These are questions for you because my PhD students know because we do meetings and I also tell them what I'm doing, and I've been trying to finish this paper for a year, and I don't finish it. I don't know. I don't because it just never ends. It's like fractal questioning, but also I don't know how to cut, and I have some questions that maybe the title is perhaps not so important. I don't know what to leave out. It's already 30 pages, and I think I need 2 more to totally finish it because they are unfinished sentences, but there are a few ones, and I can finish it in a week. But I don't know if the explanation of how ChatGPT works is valid for publication because it's a little bit of pop. I like it very much because it's very hard to find a detailed explanation, and I was always inspired by Andy Clark, who was very good at explaining very obscure scientific concepts in 10, 20 pages to philosophers, or Chatslands or many others. And I think it's worth it, but a reviewer, a friend of mine, she thought it was crap and I shouldn't, and I was like, no, are you sure? But she's technical, and not crap, because she didn't value the quality of the explanation, but she thought, this should go in an appendix. Everybody knows how ChatGPT works. And my other is that I'm not sure we can fight the term agency or autonomous agency. It's out there. It's just too late. It's like say, the autonomous vehicle is not autonomous, because autonomous systems, they are operational closure. It's like, are you fucking joking? My car drives itself, it's autonomous. You are a crazy philosopher. I don't know if this semantic battle makes any sense. Or maybe yes, I don't know. And maybe the same goes with agency and autonomous, or maybe I try to say, well, maybe they're not autonomous, maybe agents, but maybe.
I don't know. George Canguilhem was a philosopher who tried to convince people that when you are thinking about organisms and mechanisms or technical systems, you shouldn't examine them as being analogous. You should think in other kinds of relations. Perhaps they are prosthetic, they are, and well, that's what I think. I think that it's right, but even if people is talking about agents, maybe maybe someone has to say that there is another kind of framework in which one has to look at them.
Mm-hmm. That's what I try.
First, thank you, Xabier. Me ha encantado la charla.
Yes, well, thanks.
Very much. Just I was thinking very different things, but perhaps with the last one that Arantxa was saying here in your questions, perhaps I see your point, and I see perhaps the point of just having a frontal collision with interpretations, if it's agent or not. But I think that one thing that has become clear from your talk, I think, or this is why I was asking you that, is that artificial intelligence, not even this so powerful one, is autonomous in the sense that we sometimes, that they by themselves, they understand things and they produce knowledge or texts or these kind of things. Of course, natural intelligence is neither autonomous in this sense. We are trained, as these machines are trained. But then perhaps, I'm just improvising here, but one strategy might be to not like a contrast, but insisting in that part of this is being trained by humans. As a child is being trained by parents and teachers and the society and everything, because my impression is that what we're getting by autonomous agents, artificial intelligence, is just something totally detached from any kind of training process or anyone telling what to do, or it's just by magic they are intelligent out of the blue. I don't know if I'm explaining myself. Just stressing this element, which I think that is very important, because most of what you have presented here, if I'm not wrong, is, how you call it, is instructed training.
Yes, completely.
Most of, if not everything, and I was trying to remember, well, Arantxa knows much better than me or yourself, but when in the old times we were learning about PDP and the connectionists and about the hidden layers, we don't know how they, but we knew that the external layers, we knew that you have to say and you have to evaluate the output to start the next cycle, even if all the hidden layers. Well, here it seems to me, I don't know if you will.
It's the same,
but it seems to be the same. It's more powerful, but the basic element has not changed. So perhaps this idea of insisting that it's not magic in this sense that they know, it's because humans are training the machines, and then we have a lot of human-produced knowledge and test that these things can do what they do. Of course, human intelligence also, but I don't know if this might help. And the other thing I was wanting to think, since you were saying that the test Turing is outdated, and I was trying to think, but it helped, as the idea it helped, but I'm thinking that, I don't know, perhaps looking out could be an alternative Robinson Crusoe test, because it seems to me, for what you have said.
What is the Robinson Crusoe test?
I mean, just putting an artificial intelligence device in an island, isolated, like what happened to Robinson Crusoe. Normally you need a society, but a human might manage more or less in this. Most of us would die. But someone with some skills, perhaps they can survive in an island for a while until someone comes to rescue you. I was impressed when you said that all these systems, once they make a cycle, they throw everything and that they don't keep anything, that they don't change. I mean, it seems to me that they have to be always connected, but not only connected to the electricity or to the text, but it's not something that you can train, and then apart from any kind of train, you can put to work in an isolated context to do the things that they have learned to do. It seems that they have not learned to do anything separated from, in this case, just having access to the huge knowledge that is distributed in the web. I don't know if I'm explaining this.
Yes.
You can have a robot, you have been training for years with a lot of things, and then just have it for a week doing these things, but apart from any new input.
Well, if transform large language models of the kind that are now available massively, ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, Mixtral, Llama, etc., they are totally reactive, totally passive. So they are off until an input comes, and they only process this input and then regurgitate it until a halt token is produced, and then they stop. And then they are like hibernating. Well, they just nothing. It's very funny. You can try to, do you know this game where you say, think about a number, and then add 3, and then subtract, this. They have no memory, so they cannot play this type of game because they cannot hold any thought during the iterations at all, which is a big virtue. I haven't explained this, but this is a very important mode of existence of large language models, is that they need to deliver very highly priced service to millions of people. So the good thing about this architecture is that you can have the same artificial brain having a conversation with 2 million people at the same time, because every time it changes, these chess players that they play like 100 games, but the same, they don't have internal memory. Whenever they see the game, they reenact the strategy, and then they go to another one, and so they are capable of delivering high quality simultaneous service to many clients. But for the same reason, they have to be unaltered, because maybe they are interacting with a pedophile, I don't know, with his fucking crazy ideas, and they could change, or you could traumatize the large language model, and this will behave in a different manner with another user. This will be crazy. So I think they have been designed to be like that. But I don't know what happens in the Robinson Crusoe scenario. I don't know what happens when you embody these kind of architectures, because you are continuously receiving input anyway. And if you move, it's going to change, and I don't know the type of dynamics. I haven't studied the robotic implementations yet. We don't know much about them also, which is a big problem for philosophy of science. It's a huge fucking problem. Nobody can do any more cutting-edge AI research inside universities. All big corporations. There is no publicly funded basic infrastructure like CERN or, I don't know, chemistry labs. And universities are dry. If you are slightly good, you will be hired by a super amount of money, getting paid more than anybody in your family, your town, for doing artificial intelligence. And universities are void, no resources, no human and machine resources to do this type of technologies. So we don't really know. And many researchers are moving to the big corporations, well intended, because at the public science scenario, they cannot know, and you are a knowledge lover as a scientist, and they cannot intervene in the future of this technology. So the few ones that were staying in public universities, well, public or private, but in the business of publishing and making with good faith, many of those have said, I have to go into private companies because it's the only place where I can really touch the edge of what is happening. And this is a big problem. And then you mentioned something very interesting, which is the instruction part. And so in a different talk, I emphasize that there is nothing like natural intelligence. Human intelligence is artificial and is instructed and is instrumentally driven in everything from Montessori to any kind of human has been trained culturally and everything, and anthropomorphized by its environment and punished and everything. So it is not like artificial intelligence is, wow, different from natural intelligence in the human scale, at least maybe some kind of octopus there is intelligence that is not socially instructed, but certainly the human intelligence has been always artificial. And the funny thing about the artificial, even with tools, whether we need to abacus learning with tools, and even this is very interesting part of thinking about Robinson Crusoe. That a student of mine wrote an essay, and with this clever idea, even Robinson Crusoe is not alone. He's bringing the tools of humans, knife, whatever. Without it, you will die for sure. So we are nothing without the extended technologies that create our intelligence. That will happen to other forms of intelligence as well. Yeah. Okay.
I've got
Oh, Ben, yes, please.
Thanks for a great talk. I really enjoyed that. So I've got like an abstract question and just a comment. So the abstract question is to do with agency. And do you think you can have an agent system that doesn't have an internal state, but it like externalizes its state? So like, you know, like you have stigma G within ant colonies, and they build structures in the environment which then direct them what to build next. So do you like insist on an agent having an internal state?
Very big and good question. I don't know. I need to finish this paper. I'm sympathetic to what you're saying. I think transformer architect is switch off the recording. No. I think you're right. I think even within existing large language model architecture, and Miguel Aguilera, with whom I have had and will have deep exchanges regarding this paper and future papers, he thinks, and I agree with him, but I need to say something substantial here. I cannot write a paper and say, well, this is bad, maybe not bad, this is bad, maybe not bad, I don't know. Well, I'm going to make this claim. They're not agents. But if you consider the transformer architecture and the environment as a one single system, then obviously you have memory through the whole thing, and you could build some kind of intentions. I don't know if you could call them intentions, but you can fix goals and the states that, you know, retrofit back into the next token generation, and maybe considered as a whole, it will be more reasonable to say that they get closer to genuine agents, if anything like that exists. And so my final judgment would be, in the chatbot configuration, they are not genuine agents. With some expansion, they might get closer, but even animals that rely on their behavioral powers or their intelligent manifestation into stigmergic environmental modifications, they still have a big internal asymmetry, even ants, for example, that I think is essential to their performance as agents, even if they offload a lot of the capacity of being efficient agents into their environment. We also do. But look, so, in the paper there are more details, but at some points it's interesting. For example, the large language models, if you ask them explicitly, are you sure? Like sometimes, they are capable to correct themselves, but they will never do that spontaneously. You never have a full stream where they suddenly say, hey, Xabier, wait a second. I realized that I made a mistake 2 conversations before, right? And I don't know. I don't know exactly. There are many open questions. I don't have like super clear, but I need to publish this, and then maybe in a second paper I will contradict myself. But
The other comment I had was like, when you think about like general intelligence and how to build that, it seems like these systems are like just fragments. So a large language model is focused on generating text, but you need to have a completely different architecture to generate images. So you need to generate like random pixels, and then you need to refine sort of the image from randomness to make your image, your AI image. And these systems are completely different in the way they work internally.
They aren't that different, right? You're right that they randomize because images have special relationships. That is the next token trick doesn't work in 2 dimensions, and it's slightly, but they have attention modules, they have neural networks. It's not that different, right?
Yeah, they have some similarities, yeah. But it strikes me that we have to sort of make a separate architecture to do fragments, different fragments of intelligence, whereas our brains can just do everything from one general architecture.
Yes. Well, it's not clear that the human brain has one general architecture, because there are different parts of the brain with the different neuronal types and branchings and connections and everything. But I think, well, I am not super expert. I've been obsessed with artificial intelligence. That's true, but it doesn't make me an expert because I have to do many other things as we do. And but I think one of the surprises in the general strategies of building artificial intelligence was that this kind of generalist architecture was doing better in specific tasks than the best specifically trained, isolated artificial intelligence in a specific task. So you had translators, and you have a lot of energy put into an artificial intelligence that could only do translations, but very good translations. It turns out that a generalist architecture like this one is doing better translation than the best translators. And it's also happening in other domains, like this cross-fertilization of the diversity of intelligence that seems to be really powerful. Multimodality, it also happens with humans. For each sensory motor modality that we have, we need to process it slightly differently, because it's not the same sound as vision, it's not the same touch as taste, right? But a quite similar underlying architecture and connected to all the sensory motor modalities makes better perceptions or better actions in specific domains than super specialized ones. And this is something we are witnessing now with the multimodal is the new generation. I mean, the last week was ChatGPT for O. O was omni, for omni-modal. It can speak directly, it can listen, it can view videos and produce images and text. They all been trained at the same time with the same. We don't know the architecture. It's true that predicting images, because it's a different modality, is different. But I think the nucleus of the technology is quite similar, and certainly everything is connected in the deep neural networks in between, and that's the power. They're doing better than pure image or pure text or pure audio. Yeah.
Final, and maybe we can start.
Anybody else has a final? No, somebody haven't talked yet.
You're never interested in
I'm super interested.
Just now, I have a
no.
good one.
Just wait. Just
okay.
2 seconds of a bit of silence to trigger the. Anybody hasn't talked yet? 3, 2, 1. Okay, que para allá can go.
5 more.
No, that's enough.
Let's do it 5 more.
I hate the silence, but I think it's important.
Let's wait 5 more. Now it's me.
Come on, Kepa. Yes.
Now the final question that could be a good one to close is to compare this kind of transition that we're facing now with another human transition, like it was like written language. Right?
Yes.
In which there was a lot of asymmetries were created. Here you talked about something super interesting. There is also the power relationships that are going to be involved in all of this because of the resources that are needed. How that creates, so if you compare with something that was a huge transition in human societies and human relationships that was written language. Do you think that this is bigger? Do you think that this is taking us, so it's just different, or in terms of, you know, do you like transhumanist kind of thinking, let's say, do you think that this leads us somewhere that is absolutely nuts?
Well, that's a super question. Your question is, do you believe in AI like a god? No. But I agree. So I think, well, for the transhumanist, this transition is to singularity. So this is to infinity, like a black hole of human history. We are going to explode into the transcendent entity that will come out of this revolution. I don't think that's going to happen. But the transformation, as perhaps the impact on human life and planetary life, similar to the invention of writing, and I think it's the best. Is the only biggest change or similar change in human history, I think, and it will have consequences. I mean, like, for example, religion is the scale of thinking about the deep changes, and Laura is doing a fantastic TFG bachelor thesis on some of these dimensions of analyzing transhumanism as a religion, and I think we have to go even farther. How did religions change with writing? And you have all the books, like all the big books, but also some polytheist religions. Before you had animism, which some people don't consider fully a religion, and with writing came religions and civilizations. And with artificial intelligence, we don't know. I think we don't know. Like I don't know, a Neanderthal or a Homo sapiens, but in a late Neolithic, couldn't imagine what writing, money, and civilizations could grow, the scale of it, laws. I don't know, everything, literature, everything. It's just like. Yeah, it's difficult. It's very difficult to anticipate. And also, what is the attitude we should have towards that? Like, for example, I will finish with this, and we can have this conversation while we're drinking. Druids resisted writing because Druids. So I'm surrounded by people that think artificial intelligence is everything, all the bad things about humanity. Colonialism, white, heterosexual, patriarchal, exploitative, capitalist, anti-ecological, everything, all the bad things condensed in the big public enemy of all times. And I say, well, I'm sympathetic, but at the same time, people that opposed writing are gone forever. Forever. We don't almost know anything about Druids. And Druids had very good reasons to oppose writing, because once magic was transmitted through writing, you could get rid of the social apprenticeship, embodied relationship with magic, and obviously magic was going to fucking disappear, because magic is not about the objective, writable, reproducible knowledge you can have in a book. It's about becoming crazy together and having cathartic powers that are totally embodied. But Romans wiped them out. We know nothing about Druids. They couldn't write anything. We have only have one writing of Druids that I know of, and is one Druid. A group of Druid women is writing something against another Druid, like a kind of distance spell. To like black magic shit for her, something like that, but probably didn't work, and that's all we got. So it's how should we merge into virtuously and politically into this revolution to make it sustainable, for example, or politically reasonable? I don't know the right, but opposing it like. I don't think it's going to work, but I don't have the answer. Maybe we can have it with a drink. Yeah? Okay. Thank you very much.